Hi, Yard Art Painters Club. This video is going to be a little bit different because it's not live. I'm making the video and then I'm going to post it for you. I had a time conflict with the calendar, but I still wanted to give you the video, and those of you that plan out when you're going to watch and everything, I don't like to mess up that time and have to print other calendars and everything. So I thought and talked to Mary and thought I'd just do a video and then I would post the video. It's not going to be live and I can't answer the questions as they come up, but a lot of times I don't anyway because I'm not so computer savvy that I can paint and look at the screen and see the questions and everything anyway. So you go ahead and post your comments after this video, and then I'll come back on and I'll answer them. And of course Mary and Ashley always answer too, and so we'll get you the answers that you need. But that way you'll see how we're going to paint this sunflower pumpkin. Now Mary already did this pumpkin and she did it in her style, and then she asked me to do one in my style, and so that you can see you can take one blank and you can change it and make it lots of different ways. You don't have to always do it the same way. And that's the beauty of these blanks. They give you such a great palette to do your own expression. But I used a stencil on this, and I wanted to show you how to use a stencil in case you've never used one before. But this background print is a stencil, and then all the rest of this is freehand painting. But I'm going to show you how I do the stencil and how I painted this version of the sunflower pumpkin. I'm going to pull the camera down so that you can see where I'm painting and where I'm working, and you'll just hear me talk if I don't knock it over off of the stand. Okay, that's better. All right. My colors that I use. I base coated with number 18 Astrid Orange. And then my yellow, let's see, here it is. So that's my base coat, Astrid Orange. And then light yellow for the sunflower. And then I used shading brown, number 34, for the base of the sunflower. I don't think I said light yellow was number 13. So those are my base coats that I used. Then for my stem, I used nutmeg number 33 for the stem. I also use this nutmeg for my stencil. Then in the eye of the sunflower, I used number 31 camel. I used number 36 scarecrow white. I used 37 black. I used number 19 red orange, and I think I used a touch of my number 20 red. Just some little bitty bits of red. So several people asked about the stencils when I posted the picture the first time. The stencil that I used was a herringbone stencil. And they said, well, where'd you get the stencils? Hobby Lobby has stencils. Michael's has stencils. These stencils are Americana, which is the same company that makes the little jars of acrylic paint. And this particular one, I got it Tuesday morning. And this is a 12 by 12 stencil, and it was $2.99 at Tuesday morning. But I've bought stencils everywhere. Tuesday morning had a whole section of craft stuff. And like this is a different size stencil, and it is an 8 by 11, and it's kind of a floral like stencil. This one I think I got at Michael's, and it's a herringbone. This herringbone would be really good on a pumpkin. It was $2.99. This is I use this one a lot. I've forgotten the name of this one, what it's called. Doesn't have the name on there. Polka dots. If the CNC doesn't cut the lines for the polka dots and you want polka dot stencil is great to have. You can trace around it or you can use it as a stencil. Move these out for me. I use a lot of chevrons and herringbone patterns. Patterns like this. This is kind of a Y-shaped one. This one came from Hobby Lobby, and it's kind of a Y-shaped stencil. You can use stencil lettering, any kind of stencils that you want to use for a background. The main thing with a stencil is you want a very stiff brush. This is a stiff brush. And you want something to pounce that brush on. I just use paper towel. You can use paper plate. It does not matter. Now, where did I put my stencil I was going to use? You start out on one side. This one has a corner missing, so I always have to kind of deal with that a little bit. And I'm sorry, I'm coughing. That's one of the reasons I'm doing this video for you live. I've been sick. I went and got tested for COVID. That was the worst experience of my life. I thought they were going to poke my brain out. I did not have COVID. I have allergies, which went into bronchial infection. I take the lid a lot of times and I pounce an up and down motion in the lid, and then I pounce on and take about half the paint off of my paintbrush. Now you can buy stencil brushes, but if you have an old stiff brush and one that wasn't even cleaned really well, that's pretty stiff, you can use it. I put one hand down to hold my stencil and then just lightly start pouncing. And you can control how much you put on, how little you put on. I don't like it real thick and solid. I want that texture, but that is strictly up to you. And you can get a lot of area with a very little bit of paint. When you move your hand, you want to keep one other hand on the stencil so that you don't shift it at all. You can tape a stencil down. That's a lot of extra work, in my opinion. You can hold it with your hand, especially on something that's not real big. Okay, now it's beginning, just now, it's beginning to not have enough paint. So I'm going to move my hand a little bit, put my hand down here. I'm going to get some more paint and wipe my brush on my paper towel. I'm going to come all the way down here. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. Don't worry if it gets under the stencil a little bit. That's perfectly fine. It's a hand-painted look, and it's yard art. It's going to be seen from the street or somebody walking up the sidewalk. It's going to look great. And by the time you put all of the detail work on top of the stencil, any little imperfection's not going to show anyway. Okay. I have that part of the stencil done. So now I've got to pull it off, and I've got to go to the other side. I pull towards me and lift up, just like that. Now, it's better to let it dry slightly before you do the other side here. So I'm going to set this one aside, I've got another one that I already did some on. So I'm going to move these around. And I've got this one that I did maybe 15 minutes ago. It's not completely dry, but it's dry enough that it's not going to make any difference. And this is a different stencil because I only had one of that stencil. And I wanted to show you how to line this back up. So sometimes with these smaller stencils, it may take 1 or 2 times to get the whole pumpkin covered. I want to make sure I get the bottom part down here covered, and then I can come in later and get the top. But you just come in and shift it. It's going to take it down here. And shift it and just push it until you get it lined back up. And then hold it. Quatrefoil. This pattern is called a quatrefoil, I think. Maybe not. Each one of these patterns has a name. And sometimes I can remember them and sometimes I can't. Doesn't really make any difference, but... And right along the edge of your sunflower, you want to be a little more careful and go a little slower so that you don't get into the yellow. If you do, wipe it off real quickly and it'll come right off, but you want to make sure that you don't get much into that sunflower area. Okay, so that part is done. So I'm going to peel that off. So I just have this little corner up here left to do. And because this part's dry, I really think I can put this on there and do that without making a mess. So that's what I'm going to do. And for the purposes of demonstration too, if I mess it up, I can fix it later. So you just line it right back up. And there we go. And you've got your entire pumpkin with your pattern. So I'll put this brush in the water, put my nutmeg away. And the nutmeg is the same color that I used for the stem. So when I'm going to let that dry, I'll work on the stem just slightly. So I took my black for my stem. I want some lines in the stem. If you want a circular stem at the top, you can come in with one of your liner brushes and just make a spiral circle. Come along the edge. You've got a CNC cut line here, so I'll go ahead and put my black right in there, and then just a line up here and a line coming down. Now dogs, don't y'all start that. They'll bark on me. Okay, so I've got my black lines in there. And the white highlight always makes the big difference. So even after you get your black in, you want some white. So I'll come back in with white. And just add just a little bit of white. Doesn't take much white, but just a little bit of white on there. Okay, on my sunflower, I have the background, my nutmeg, and then I just took the side of the brush and I got darker the closer to the petals and lighter as I worked out, and I used 3 different colors, I guess you would say, and then I have black kind of in between them. If you look at sunflowers, you see they have a lot of seeds. So that's the look I was going for, is a lot of seeds in the sunflower. And it's 2 or 3 layers, so you have to let it dry in between each layer. So since this is nutmeg, no, I'm sorry, that's shading brown. I'm going to take nutmeg. And I took a brush. I took a pointed brush. You see this brush? There we go. It's not a good point anymore. It used to be a really good point, but I've used it so much that the end has kind of frayed. So I use it now kind of as a teardrop shape. So I just get paint on the brush and then I just touch. And this is not going to make a lot of difference in the color here at the first, because I'm putting one brown on top of another brown. And I just lay it down. I just touch and lift. Just touch and lift. And I did 2 rows. And I started where it was in between each one of those touches. And they're all going to be basically the same size because your brush is the same size. And you get about the same amount of paint on there. And if it globs, that's okay. We're going to put another color on top of it. And as you curve around, it's not going to fill in just exactly because the curve is bigger. All right, so that's my first 2 rows using my nutmeg. Now, dogs, you all don't start that. The kids are getting off school. The school bus is letting out, and they're seeing them out the front window, and oh, they just can't stand it because kids are walking on the sidewalk in front of their house. Okay, this is reindeer brown. And I think reindeer brown, see, is a little darker than camel. And I want to go from dark down to light. So I'm going to take reindeer brown, and I'm going to do the same thing. And this is going to be a little easier to see because it's a shade lighter. And if you get one that you don't think is quite big enough or quite the right shape, but I've got 1 row of those, so I'm going to come kind of in between. And it's a little teardrop or a little seed shape. Reminds me of that seeds that are in the sunflower when they get ripe. You harvest them for those sunflower seeds. So you just touch. Okay, so I got 2 rows of reindeer brown, number 32. I want to use that same brush, so I'm going to wash it out and kind of dry it off. And then my next 2 rows are going to be camel 31. And it's just 1 shade lighter. And I just put my finger in it. You have to watch as you're working on down that you don't get your hand into those darker colors that you just had. So I'm going to lift my hand up a little straighter and still try to get my little teardrop shape. Okay. Okay, that was my camel. Now, you know, if you've watched me paint, last time I guess it was, I told you that I had a little bit of scarecrow white left, but I didn't have a lot. And I was kind of running out, and I didn't really have time to go back to the store. So I put a little bit of camel in my scarecrow white. And it gave me a darker scarecrow white, and I finished using it. But now I've got this mixture that's half camel and half scarecrow white. So I'm going to use it next because it's going to be 1 shade lighter of that same hue. A hue is the name of a color. So all of these are the same hue. They're just different values, and value is the lightness and the darkness. Value, you add white to make it lighter. You add black or the complement to make it darker. So now I'm going to do 2 rows of this mixture of half scarecrow white and half camel. So my last row is going to be number 36, scarecrow white. There's all of my seeds. Now you would want to let that dry. Then I did 2 things. I went back in and I put black, a little bit of black in between the first rows of seeds. I didn't do it down here for this very lightest, but I put black in between because that's making them pop out. Having that black gives them some shading. So I didn't use this same brush. I got a smaller brush, and I got a brush that, okay, here we go. Here's a good brush. I have lots of brushes, and you know, they're cheap brushes. I don't buy really, really expensive brushes, and just when they get worn out, throw them away. But, and this one is a size 2, where I think this one, it's worn off, but this one was probably a 4 or 5. But you can see they're a little bit different in size. This one is a little smaller than this one. It's still a pointed or type liner type brush. So I'm going to take my black, and you really should wait till that's good and dry. I think I can be careful enough and it won't matter. But I'm doing the same thing. I'm getting the brush, and then I'm just going in between and using that brush tip as making that teardrop shape. And it's a little smaller, but if you get a big one in there, that's all right. You know, those seeds, sometimes you see little seeds, sometimes you see big seeds in a sunflower, so it doesn't matter. But that black makes those seeds pop out. And you get between those seeds. And you want it smaller than the seed that you had. I see that one wasn't good and dry, so I picked up a little tan, but that's okay. And you could do this with the tip of your liner brush if you don't have lots of brushes. Anytime I find brushes on sale, when Hobby Lobby has their 40% off coupon and all, I always go and buy a set of those. You know, they're $8.99 for a set, and they'll have 4 or 5 brushes in there. And then I use my 40% off coupon. Keep getting my little finger in this first row. That's why it's a good idea to let this dry in between times. Now, I did not go down and highlight the black in my really, really light, because I wanted that shadowing, I guess you'd call it. You can see how I set shadows. Now, also, after it dries, and we'll see if this dries enough, but I touched a touch of red in the top 2 rows, a touch of asterisk orange in the second 2 rows, a touch of light yellow, no, light orange, I'm sorry, light orange in the next 2 rows, and then yellow in these light rows, and then white in the last rows. So you had a layering. You've got the black, you've got your base colors, and then you've got this highlight of color, and it really makes that pop. And it's not hard at all. You're just touching paint, but it looks really something. But it's not hard, because you're just layering that paint. And then you can see I highlighted with a white highlight, and I outlined with black. Okay, I'm going to put this over and let this be drying. And on this one, I'll kind of show you what I did with my sunflower. We've done a lot of sunflowers, and there's not a lot going on with the sunflowers, honestly, because we've done a lot of the sunflowers, and you can do the sunflowers. So I'll put this in pretty quickly. But I got my shading yellow and my script liner, and I'm just going to come up. That's a little thick. little bit of my shading yellow, which is number 14. I'll get my light orange. Put in some light orange. And then my red orange. And I don't make them come up as high. I let them be a little lower. And then I always add in a little shading brown to a sunflower. They have a dark vein that you can sometimes see, and I just think it adds a little bit of texture. So I've got my shading brown. Ooh, that one really needs to be shaken up. That must be a new one. Shading brown's 34. Okay. Now let that dry, and after that dries, then I'll put, see, after that all is dry, then I'll put a white highlight on each side, and I'll use my white highlight just on one side. And to make it curve, I use it on one side that's like the outside edge of this side, and then when I come over here, I'll turn one of them different. Gives you a little visual interest. See, I've got white highlights on all of these are on the same side, but this one's on a different side. It just gives it a little bit of oomph that your eye doesn't, it recognizes, but you don't think about it. Oh, that one's on the opposite side. Then outline in your CNC cut lines with your black. Now, let's see if this one is dry enough. I think it is. Okay, I got to get some shape to this pumpkin now. So, yeah, this one has no CNC lines on here. So you can just highlight where you want, or you can make the individual pumpkin lines from the bottom to the top. That's kind of up to you. What I did, and I'm going to show you how, but I first went in with a wide mop brush, and I put my red around the outside, and then I came down and I made red curved lines, and I highlighted around my sunflower with the red. Then I came back after that dried and I put just a little bit on the corner of that mop brush with my nutmeg brown. Then after that was dry, I came in with my black lines. So I'll show you how I kind of figured out where I wanted them. Let me get one of my brushes. Okay, so I'll get my red. And I'm just going to touch the corner of that red. And I want to highlight around my sunflower. And then I'm coming around the entire outside edge of the pumpkin. And see, it's not showing up a whole lot. And that's kind of what I wanted. So I'm making it fairly wide. And I'm letting it brush out so that it's not real solid. Not putting tons of paint on the brush, but I'm letting it come around. Okay, now here's where I decide, okay, I'm gonna come in an arc and I'm gonna follow this outside edge. Now you could pencil this in first if you want to, but I'm just putting the side of my brush, I'm letting it come up and kind of touch where that stem is. And then I want to do an equal one on this side. So I come up here. And then I want another one that's going to come from here. And then another one from here. So I have my segments of my pumpkin. And then you'll let that dry slightly. If I can get my lid on. There we go. You'll let that dry slightly. And let's see, did I use nutmeg? I think I did. Well, I think I used, yeah, I used nutmeg. So I'll come back in with some nutmeg and I'll come right along the edge of my pumpkin. And again, I want it a little bit wider because I still am going to put a black outline around there to highlight. So it has to be a little bit wider. And if it picks up some of that red because the red's not completely dry, that's all right. You want that three-dimensional look anyway. So I've got right along the outline. Then I'm going to come down the center of that red line. So I've got some red on both sides. Just like that. And that's all the brown I'm going to put on there. Then I'll let that dry, and then I will come right down the edge with my black and the edge of and the center of my brown with black. You can see I put my black on there, and my black is along the edge. After that's all dry, then you want a white highlight. And then you're done. And see, it looks pretty complex and it looks pretty detailed, but it's really been very, very easy. And I think, you know, any of you can master this, no matter what level painter you are. When I see the comments, so many people talk about maybe not being able to do some of the techniques that Mary does, or some of the techniques that Ashley does, or that I do. And we've been painting for years. But try. It's so much easier than you think it is. I'm sorry my phone is ringing. I should have turned it off, and I didn't think about doing that. So I hope you'll try this sunflower pumpkin, whether you do this style or whether you do Mary's style. Try a stencil on some things. Gives you an extra little layer of texture. You all have a great time painting. Post any questions, any comments that you have, and I'll answer them as soon as I can. You all have a great day. Thank you for painting with me again today. Well, that's not a very good look, is it? All right, y'all have a great time. Paint lots. There's great stuff over at the store, so go over and look at all the new designs that are cut out and grab you a couple and paint, and then post what you do, because some of you are doing such a fantastic job. I saw Diane's pumpkin that she painted today, and my word, that stacked pumpkin was so cute with that boo right in the center. So take a look at what everybody else is doing and post what you're doing too. See y'all later. Bye-bye.